something that every driver should have in their repertoire, because it's a manipulation. You do it even when you have a car that's balanced. He will know he's got a light front end, and I work on this a great deal when you get to the very top end of a racing driver, and that is to say, of course you've always got to be prepared for what's coming next, but that's part of the structure, braking and so on. But when you're coming up to a corner, you know, say it's a downforce corner, you know you're going to have a little bit of push on the other side because you've lost your front wing or lost some downforce. And before that happens, you have to predict what sort of angle you're going to want on the car, and there'll be a point, perhaps you're brushing the brakes a little bit going into a corner, and you will at that point, before you've got anywhere near the apex, put on the additional bit of steering, maybe hold on to the brake for a fraction longer and get a direction change before what one would have called the normal apex. Because your thinking will be, I've now lost downforce in the front, the longer any corner goes on, the more time I'm comparatively going to lose. The same tactic you use if your front tyres are starting to go off. Why would I want to go fast around the corner and ask more of them? So you simply, before you get to your apex, you put on a little bit more steering. You may stay off the throttle for a little bit longer, or you may stay on the brake just a fraction longer and make a bit of a point where the car can change direction a little bit like a 50 pence piece rather than a constant U. And then the remainder of that corner, you've minimized the disadvantage. You're trying to get the steering back out of it, so you're asking as little as possible of it from the apex onward. And the predictive manipulation of what is going to occur next is a very critical part of a racing driver, and it's part of a natural racing driver. I know we work on structures and such like, and technical terms, but a natural driver, almost like a rally driver, will be able to get that nose in and be quite happy to hold a drift. You're not holding a drift, you're just minimizing understeer. It's a normal procedure.
So it's not a reflexy
Not at all.
thing.
Not at all. The idea is not to use your reflexes at all, so you're reacting to nothing. You get the message. It could be a rear end problem where you've lost downforce or grip at the rear, in which case it's going to be a very slow turn on the steering wheel. It's going to be a teasing of the throttle until the car's got past that critical point, so that you can then increase the throttle with less steering lock on the car, and you adapt immediately. And you might lose a half a tenth here and a half a tenth there, but to the outside world it looks the same. It's that's what I would call it, a predictive manipulation. And you can work on this with drivers when they get all the other structure stuff in there. If you start doing it before they've got there, then they think, oh, that's great, we just do a dirt track speedway thing, get the nose in, hold opposite, look, I've got car control, that stuff. It isn't that. It's trying to make a straight line out of something where you're going to naturally have a longer curve than you really want. You've got to create a form of rotation. Now, if it's a corner that's completely flat and you really don't want to lift at all, then you would just start turning the wheel a little bit sooner and a little bit more so that you get your understeer out of the way. You'll put on, say, 5 degrees of extra steering, I'm making the number up, for about 2 degrees direction change, because you're going to lose some of that. I'm making that number up as well. And all you're looking for is the shortest corner you possibly can, because you're in trouble. Same with worn front tires. You almost develop a block system of driving in, wait, direction change, go. You'd be amazed how little time you can lose. But that's in the gift of a Kimi, it's in the gift of a Lewis, and I think Alonso, and a number of natural racing drivers. And it just means, because this happens a lot, used to happen in my day as well, you'd say, you'd knock your front wing against Terry Bootson or someone like that, and then the sponsor would say, well, how come your wing's in the air and we spend all this time and money getting the wing just exactly right, and the thing still goes out there and runs at the front. And because it's a difficult one to explain, you say, but you've adapted.
Let's talk about the 3 drivers you mentioned, Kimi, Fernando and Lewis, and without mentioning names now, let's talk about a driver who isn't of that ilk. What do they do when a front cascade fin breaks?
They say on the radio, you know, I'm going to destroy the front tyres, I need more front wing. Kimi actually did get some more downforce during a pit stop there. They say, I'm going to destroy the tyres before this section is over. they go slower, they end up with more push. It's almost visible from the outside of the car. It's not visible with these other drivers. They will ask for a better setup rather than look into themselves to think, can I adapt this? Now, you've got to go a little ways down the chain for that stuff to be happening. They're all good, but you'd be surprised the lack of manipulation that does occur with people.
The soft option tyre came in for a lot of stick in China, but looking at it from the other side of the fence, which is when it was on, it was a very, very quick qualifying tyre. What is the key to a driver maximising a one-lap qualifying tyre before you've started the lap? How do you know what you can actually do with the tyre?
Well, first thing is you take as little out of it as possible, so that if you don't quite know what you can get out of it, you've got a bit of a margin you can make a mistake within. But you will get that feeling. A driver will just push the throttle, and maybe it could even be half throttle, three-quarters throttle on the exit of a slow corner. He'll turn the wheel in a certain way at a certain speed, and he'll get a better turn in than what he thought. And when he gets to the full racing corner the next time, he will know how hard or soft to turn that wheel. You get these messages. It tells you it doesn't have to be at maximum speed. Prost always tested at three-quarter speed or at 90% speed. He went absolutely flat out doing that stuff. You can get the message, and it's usually best to do it on a slowish corner. And I've turned the wheel like this. It did this. Okay, now I'm coming up and commit. I'm going to turn it at half the rate, at an increased rate. You get those messages. Same with the throttle. With minuscule inputs by a driver, you can get minuscule messages back. And when you make a mistake with the rate you've turned the wheel or gone on the brake or gone on the throttle, it's a tiny mistake. And you've adapted by the next corner. But it's down to how progressively and how tiny you can make your inputs, steering and with your feet and your hands.
And how big a factor or not is braking later from high speed when you're on that quick lap with a lot of grip?
You can do it a little bit, but you've got to be careful you don't move your body any different. Usually you'll decide, I'm going to brake 5 meters later here, poof, on the brake, and you move your body different. So what one has to do...
What do you mean by move your body differently?
That is decide to punch the brake pedal a bit harder because you're arriving faster, or punch the throttle a bit harder because you may have a bit more grip and so on. Usually when you get into a really compressed situation, people move their bodies in a slightly more rigid and abrupt way. And what one has to do is have a two-level way of driving where you separate the fear from the feel. What you see through your visor coming at you with the rate you move your body, where you pull the levers down here as well, on a threshold, easy to do slow. But when you absolutely think this is the latest I'm going to brake, and I'm going to brake a little bit later, still move yourself in the same way.